I didn't move into the house expecting anything unusual. I just needed a quiet place after the breakup, somewhere affordable where no one would ask too many questions. I found a listing online 46. Wilder Street, a 2-bedroom place in Braintree, Massachusetts, listed way below market value. The landlord, Mr. Kenner, was an older man, polite, but with a jittery kind of energy. When I met him, he handed me the keys and said people don't tend to stay long in the house as old bones that like to talk. I thought it was just a weird turn of phrase, probably meant the place creaked a lot or had plumbing issues. The first few nights were quiet, too quiet. Actually, there's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It presses against your ears like it's waiting for something. That's what Wilder Street felt like right from the start. Within the first week, I noticed a small crack above the living room window. Nothing major, just a pale line in the plaster. I texted Kenner, and he said old plaster does that especially. In older houses, it's drying out, nothing to worry about, he said. But over the next few days, new cracks showed up, not big ones, just small spidery lines above the hallway light switch near the bathroom mirror, even behind one of the picture frames I'd hung. They didn't look structural, so I let it go. Then one night, as I was trying to fall asleep, I heard tapping behind my headboard, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I sat up and listened, but there was nothing else. I turned the lamp on, looked behind the bed. Nothing, no pipes, no loose boards, just drywall. I figured maybe the house really was settling, but the tapping happened again the next night, only this time it moved. It started near my head, then continued down the wall toward the foot of the bed, like someone crawling inside the wall with their fingertips. I started dreaming about the house in the dreams. I'd be standing in the living room at night with the lights off. Everything was still. I'd walk slowly toward the far wall, the one with the biggest crack, and press my ear to it. There would be a soft whispering, not clear at first, like someone speaking through water, but always one word came through: Kayla, my name. I would wake up drenched in sweat. Heart pounding, not from fear exactly, but from something else, a kind of wrongness, like the dream wasn't mine, like I was borrowing it from someone else to fix things. I tried patching the cracks, bought joint compound from the hardware store, filled in every line I could find, repainted the spots where the plaster had chipped. I thought maybe if I sealed them up things would settle, but within 2 days they were back, not in the same places, different ones. The new cracks looked like veins stretching out from corners, like something was pushing outward from beneath the surface. One of the cracks above the bathroom mirror looked like a crooked grin. Another near the hallway looked like a long branching hand. I didn't tell anyone at first, but when I had a friend over, he pointed at one and joked, "It looks like something's trying to get out." I laughed, but not really. Then I started hearing whispers while I was awake one afternoon. I was rinsing a dish in the kitchen, and I heard a softness like someone breathing through their teeth, followed by a faint voice, my name, just barely audible: Caleb. I shut off the faucet and stood still, heart thudding in my chest. The whisper came again, this time from the hallway, louder: Caleb. I stepped into the hallway. It was empty. Nothing but the light hum of the refrigerator behind me. But a new crack had formed above the thermostat, a thin vertical one. It looked like a wound, and I swear to God it was pulsing like it was breathing in and out. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining the walls folding open and someone crawling out, something boneless and wet, dragging itself across the floor, whispering my name over and over. I called Mr. Kenner the next morning, asked him to come over. When he arrived, I showed him the cracks. He barely looked at them. Instead, he stood in the middle of the room and stared at the floor. "I told you the house likes to talk," he said. I snapped at him, demanded to know what the hell that meant. That's when he told me about the woman who lived there before me, Mariah Kemp, 28, lived alone, moved in 3 years ago. At first, it was little things, strange dreams, cold air in the hallway. Then she told him the house was saying her name. She'd leave voicemails for Kenner in the middle of the night, just her whispering cracks over and over. One day, she vanished, left her car in the driveway, her phone, and while on the kitchen table, police never found her. But when they searched the place, they discovered something else in the back wall of the hallway, just beneath the old paneling. Her name, Mariah. Not painted, not scratched. It was part of the plaster grown into it like bone. I told Kenner I was leaving. He didn't argue, just nodded, said he understood. The next morning I packed my things, shoved them into the car as quickly as I could. But when I opened the front door to leave, I heard a voice from upstairs. Not a whisper, not faint. It was clear and familiar and terrifying. Don't leave me alone again. I froze. That voice was mine, exactly my voice, like it had been recorded and played back through a throat that wasn't human. I ran out, didn't even lock the door, slept in my car that night, in a gas station parking lot the next morning. I drove to a motel 3 towns over. I thought I'd never go back, but I did one last time to grab a few papers I've forgotten, and maybe to prove to myself that it wasn't real, that I hadn't lost my mind. The house was still quiet, eerily. So the walls looked normal, almost too normal, like they were pretending to be innocent again. I stepped into the bedroom, and that's when I saw the mirror. It was cracked, not on the surface, but from the inside, like the glass had shattered inward, and in the web of breaks, etched faintly into the reflection, was my name, Caleb, and beneath it 2 words, more to come. I didn't go back to Wilder Street for almost 2 weeks after the mirror cracked like that. I told myself I was done with the place, but I kept thinking about what was written in the glass. More to come. Not a threat, exactly, not a promise either, just a quiet inevitability, like the house knew something, didn't like it, had time to wait. I stayed in a cheap motel off Route 3, small place, thin walls, neighbors who argued through the night. I barely slept most nights. I'd sit on the edge of the bed and stare at the carpet until morning, thinking about the cracks. Try to remember how many there had been. I couldn't count them all, not exactly. They changed, moved. Some faded, others grew. It was like the house itself was alive, not metaphorically, but literally alive, not a ghost, not a curse, something older, something slow. And watching about 10 days, and I started hearing things again, not loud, not like before, but enough to make me doubt I was safe from its soft tapping at the motel wall behind the bed, the exact same rhythm I'd heard on Wilder Street. Sometimes 3 knocks, sometimes 5, always when the lights were off. I'd turn them on, and it would stop. One night I heard it and whispered, "Stop," out loud, and the knocking stopped immediately. That scared me more than if it had continued. I thought I might be losing my mind. I went to a clinic, told them I hadn't been sleeping well. They gave me pills for anxiety, sleeping aids, the kind that make you feel like you've been underwater for 8 hours when you wake up. I took them twice. They didn't help. The dreams came back, the ones with the walls and the whispering. But now it wasn't just my name. I could hear other names, sometimes all overlapping, like voices in a tunnel, like dozens of mouths pressed against the walls, speaking. At once one name stood out. I remembered it from what Kenner had told me. Mariah, the woman who disappeared. It wasn't just in the dreams. Now I started hearing it whispered during the day, when I was walking through the parking lot of the motel, when I was washing my hands, when I was standing in line at the pharmacy, just under the sound of everything else. I'd hear Mariah, Mariah, over and over and over, and always a split second later, Caleb, like the house was pairing us together. I finally broke down and called Kenner again. He sounded different, tired in a way that didn't just mean old, like something had drained the marrow out of him. He asked if I was okay, and I laughed. I asked him if he'd ever lived in the house himself. There was a long pause on the line, and then he said, "No, never, not once. My father bought it in 1978 and rented it to a couple. I was maybe 16. He never lived in it either. He just kept it in the family." So I asked him why, and he said, because something inside it remembers the first time I asked what he meant by remembers what he said stuck with me. He said it doesn't forget names, it doesn't forget faces, it doesn't forget pain. I tried to press him for more. But he just said you should burn it down if you want to sleep again, but even that might not be enough. 2 days later, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I went back to the house. It was raining hard when I pulled up. Gray sheets of water hitting the windows. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. Everything looked normal and wrong at the same time, like someone had recreated the house from memory, but didn't get the colors right. I sat in the car for a long time, just staring, waiting for something to happen, for the house to blink or breathe or whisper, but it didn't. Inside, it smelled like dust and wrought the kind of damp stink that fills old wood when no one's lived in it. For a while, the lights flickered when I turned them on. One bulb in the hallway popped. As soon as I touched the switch, little shards of glass hit the floor. I didn't bother sweeping them up. The cracks were back in full force. Worse than before, they'd spread across the walls like veins, like dried riverbeds. They didn't look like damage anymore. They looked like writing, like a language I couldn't read, but felt anyway. I ran my fingers along one of them, and it felt warm, not room temperature, not plaster warm, skin warm. I made my way to the living room and stopped cold because there was something new on the far wall. Not a crack, not a stain, something deeper. The plaster had warped inward, slightly forming a shallow hollow, like something had pushed from the other side and dented it. It looked like the shape of a face, not clear, not detailed, just the impression of a head leaned against the wall as if someone had pressed themselves into it from the inside. I stood there frozen for what felt like minutes, then stepped forward and pressed my hand against it. It was warm, and I swear I felt a pulse. I turned and left that room, went upstairs. My old bedroom looked the same, cracked mirror bed frame, dust, a smell like something metallic and faintly sweet. I opened the closet and found something I hadn't seen before. Tucked into the back corner where the baseboard met the floor was a torn piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully. It looked like part of a journal page. The writing was shaky, slanted, almost illegible, but I could make out a few lines. I don't think the cracks lead outside. I think they lead, and I think something sees through them. I think it's learning my name. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. So I left, went back downstairs, and sat on the bottom step of the staircase. I could hear something faint, not knocking, not whispering this time. It was humming, not a melody, just a steady low tone, like someone vocalizing a note from the bottom of their throat. It was coming from all around, not the basement, not the attic, just the walls, all of them, like the house was humming to itself, like it was pleased. I got up and walked to the kitchen. I opened the cabinet under the sink and found something else tucked into the back, taped to the inside of the wood paneling, another page torn, and brittle, more writing. They told me it was grief, but grief doesn't knock on your walls. Grief doesn't whisper at night. Grief doesn't say your name in someone else's voice. That was when I realized something. The names I'd been hearing in my dreams weren't random. They were being given to me. The house was sharing them like memories, like it was passing them down, and I was the next to carry them. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I slept in the house on the couch, light on, kitchen door open. I thought maybe if I just faced it, stayed still, listened, I could figure out what it wanted. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up, not to a sound, but to silence, total silence. No hum, no creaks, no breathing. It was suffocating, and in that silence I heard one single whisper, Mariah, then a long pause, then again Caleb, and then another name, not one I knew, not one I'd ever heard, but something inside me reacted to it like it had always been. There's something behind my ribs, something beneath my skin. I don't even know how to spell it properly. It wasn't in English, not really. It was wet and wrong, and meant to be spoken with a different kind of mouth. The cracks in the walls began to widen, slowly stretching as I watched them like they were yawning. I didn't run. I just sat there the whole time, heart like a drum in my chest. I don't think I fell asleep, but the next thing I knew, it was morning pale gray light slipping through the blinds. The cracks were back to normal, thin, dry, silent like none of it happened. But I knew better. I'd heard the third name, and now I was part of it. I stayed in the house after that. I didn't really mean to. I kept telling myself I'd leave in the morning, that I just needed one more day to gather the rest of my things, maybe call someone, bring a priest, bring dynamite. I don't know. But each night I stayed, the harder it became to leave, not because I wanted to stay, but because the house made it hard every night. I slept a little less. I would try to lie down, close my eyes, but I'd start to feel it before sleep. Came the pressure in the walls, not sound, not even a presence exactly. It was more like a focus, like something pressing its full attention against me and waiting. I stopped using the bedroom altogether. I slept on the couch or in the kitchen, but it didn't help. The cracks were in every room. Now, no matter how many I patched, painted, sanded, they came back. Every morning, some new, some in the same places, but wider. I kept hearing names in the dark, not just mine, not just Mariah, more and more every night, whispered from the walls, sometimes shouted in my sleep, always in different voices. A child's whisper, an old man's breath of voice that sounded like it came from underwater, like lungs filled with silt. One night, I was standing at the kitchen sink when I felt something brush my ankle, not a breeze, not a bug, something like a fingertip. I looked down, nothing there. But when I turned back to the sink, I saw a crack in the tile that hadn't been there before, a long hairline fracture snaking up the wall toward the ceiling, and I swear I saw it move. When I blinked, it looked longer, like it had stretched while my eyes were shut. I started researching the house, what little history I could find. The property records were incomplete, but I tracked down old newspaper clippings and the local archive stories from the 60s, 70s, strange deaths, a boy who fell down the stairs and broke his neck. Neighbors said he was sleepwalking, a woman who went missing for days, then came back, changed, never spoke again, moved into a psychiatric hospital where she scratched her name into the floor with her fingernails every day until she died. Each time I read one of those names, I remembered hearing it whispered through the cracks. They weren't random. The house was holding on to them, keeping them, echoing them. And now it had mine too. I tried recording the voices, left my phone on overnight in the living room. When I played it back the next morning, I heard static, then faint voices, one by one, whispering, overlapping, some crying, some laughing. And then just before the recording ended, I heard my own voice, clear and calm, say, "I belong to the house now." I didn't say that I hadn't spoken. All night, I hadn't even gotten off the couch, and yet it was there, my voice, not scared, not angry, just calm and final. And that terrified me more than anything else. I went back to Kenner again in person. This time his place was 10 minutes from Wilder Street. I found him in his backyard feeding birds. He looked even worse than before, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I asked him how many people had lived in that house before me, how many names it had kept. He wouldn't give me a number. He just said too many. He told me something else, though, something he hadn't mentioned before. He said the house didn't start like that. It was built normal, quiet, but something happened in the late 50s. A man named Norman Deal moved in alone, and over the next 6 months, he went from normal to mad, started carving symbols into the floors, covering the mirrors with bed sheets, told people he heard angels in the walls, but they didn't like God. He disappeared on New Year's Eve 1958. They never found him, just his boots by the front door and a message scratched into the ceiling above his bed that said, "The names won't let me out," Kenner said. After that, the house changed. Tenants didn't last long. Some stayed only a few weeks. Most left without giving a reason. Some were never seen again, but no one ever stayed longer than a year. Not one person. He told me the last thing his father said before dying was don't ever live in that house, son. It remembers you. I asked Kenner why he didn't just tear it down, sell the land, burn it, and walk away. And he said, I've tried, it won't let me. Every time I get close, something happens. Plans fall through, workers get hurt, or quit permits get lost, people go missing the house. Defends itself. When I left his place, I felt like something had shifted in my head, like a piece of the puzzle had slid into place. And now the whole shape was starting to show, and I didn't like the shape at all back at Wilder Street. I did something I hadn't done before I went down into the basement. It was colder than the rest of the house, the air heavy with moisture, and right there were no lights down. There only an old chain hanging from the ceiling and a single rusted bulb. When I pulled it, the light sputtered and came on, and I saw the name scratched into the concrete floor. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, etched by hand, some deep and angry, some soft. And shaking Caleb was already there. I hadn't written it. I hadn't stepped foot down there until then. But it was there etched near the far wall under a thin crack that ran from the floor up to the ceiling, and below my name, a fresh space empty, like it was waiting for someone else. I went back upstairs and grabbed my keys. I was ready to leave, really leave this time. But when I opened the front door, the entire world outside looked wrong. The street looked stretched longer than normal. The trees were still, but wrong too, like they were props painted in place. The sky had no clouds, no wind, just a heavy gray curtain that didn't move. I shut the door, and the walls groaned like the house sighed with relief. That night, the whispering got louder. It didn't stop. Even when I turned on all the lights, it didn't care anymore. The names came in waves, some crying out, some begging, some laughing, and voices that cracked at the edges. One name kept repeating over and over, Mariah, 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 until I felt sick from hearing it. I yelled at the walls, screamed at the cracks, told them to stop, told them to take someone else. And the whispering stopped, dead silence like. The whole house inhaled at once, and then a single voice, deep and low, not male, not female, not even human, said, "You let me in." The power went out, the lights died, the room plunged into a thick darkness that wasn't just lack of light, it was heavier, like it had weight, like it settled onto your skin. I lit a candle and saw the walls shifting just slightly, the cracks moving, crawling, the names folding over each other like skin peeling back to show more names underneath. I passed out at some point. I don't remember when or how, but when I woke up it was morning and everything looked normal again, cracks still there, but quiet, the whispering gone like it had never happened. But I know better now, I know. I'm not alone in here. I found a name on the wall this morning near the bathroom door. It was written in fresh plaster, still drying. I hadn't touched any plaster in days, and it wasn't there yesterday. The name wasn't mine, wasn't Mariah, wasn't any of the others I'd heard. It was a name I haven't spoken in years. It was my mother. She died when I was 12. The house knows her now. The house is reaching backward through me, pulling everything I love into its walls. I sat at the kitchen table all morning staring at that name, my mother's name, carved into the wall above the sink, not scratched, not painted, etched into the plaster, like it had always been there, like the house had waited for the right time to show it to me. The letters were sharp, shallow, almost delicate, and the second I saw them, something inside me went still, like a tuning fork had been struck in my chest. I hadn't said her name in years, hadn't thought about her voice or her laugh or the way she used to sing in the car when I was a kid, and now here it was brought back to me, not by memory, but by something watching me, something learning me. I didn't touch it. I didn't try to erase it. I just sat there until the sun went down and the shadows crawled across the floor like ink poured from an invisible jar. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't tell myself. It was the house haunting me. It wasn't haunting. It was studying every breath, every thought. It had taken more from me than I'd realized. I started noticing things out of place, not big things, not at first, but enough to make me feel wrong in my own body. The photo on the mantel was slightly different than I remember. My father's eyes were looking off to the left, not straight ahead like they had always done, and the clock in the hallway ticked slower than it should, just barely, not enough to notice unless you stood there for a long time. And I did. I stayed up for 3 nights straight. I stopped eating, stopped drinking anything but tap water. The walls whispered and the floor shifted under my feet. I could hear voices moving between the rooms, even when I was alone. They never said full sentences, just fragments, pieces of conversations, names like echoes of lives that used to exist in this place. On the 4th day, I started seeing her, my mother, not clearly, not like a ghost in the hallway, but hints of her shape in the bathroom mirror that didn't match my reflection. A voice calling my name from the back room that matched hers perfectly. I went to the basement again just to get away from the upstairs and found another name scratched into the wall this time. Just one word: Caleb. Not in my handwriting, not scratched in panic or fear. It was careful, slow, deliberate. And next to it were dozens of tally marks. I didn't know what they meant, but I knew they were mine, even though I'd never made them. I could feel in my teeth and my bones like they were carved into me. That night, the cracks changed. They widened, stretched across the ceiling, dipped into the floorboards. I watched one of them grow in real time, like a split in old skin, and I swear I heard breathing from inside. It's soft, steady, like lungs behind plaster. I tried to leave again, packed a bag, grabbed my keys, but the front door wouldn't open, not stuck, not jammed, just locked from the inside, and the key didn't work anymore. No matter how I turned it, no matter how hard I pulled, it stayed shut. And the house groaned, like it was annoyed, like it was disappointed in me. I ran to the window, tried to smash it open with a chair, but when the glass broke, there was just wall behind it, not outside, not sky, just drywall. Behind the glass, like the house had replaced the outside with more of itself. I fell back onto the floor and stayed there until I slept or passed out. I don't know which. When I woke up, I was in the bed upstairs, tucked under the blanket like a child, and the door was closed. The air smelled like dust and salt. And when I sat up, I saw that the cracks were now forming patterns across the wall, not random anymore, not branches or veins, but shaped spirals, circles, something close to symbols. I traced one with my finger and felt it shift under my skin like something was watching me from the other side. I found a box in the closet that afternoon, a shoebox I don't remember owning. Inside were photographs, all black and white, some old, some new. Every one of them showed someone standing in front of the house, but no faces. Every person in the photos had a smudge blank where the face should be, like something had wiped it clean but left everything else intact. And at the bottom of the box was a mirror just small enough to fit in my palm. I looked into it, and for a moment I didn't see myself. I saw a hallway that didn't exist in the house, long and narrow, with doors on both sides, and the sound of footsteps getting closer, not running, just walking slow and steady. And when I blinked, I was back in a room, but I dropped the mirror and it cracked across the center. And the crack looked exactly like the one on the bathroom wall, the one that had spelled out more to come. I stopped counting the days after that. The clocks didn't work anymore. They all ticked in different rhythms, some too fast, some too slow, and some in reverse. The sun didn't seem to rise at the right angle anymore. It came in from the east, but the shadows fell the wrong way, as if the light was bending through something thick and wrong. Then something new started. The names stopped whispering for a day, and the silence was worse because now it wasn't just sound I was hearing, it was memory. I started remembering things that didn't belong to me, moments that felt like dreams, but sharper memories of people I'd never met, arguing in the kitchen, screaming in the attic, carving their names into the walls with broken nails, and sobbing as they repeated the same word over and over. The house wasn't haunted by spirits. It was haunted by memory, by self. It wasn't killing people. It was absorbing them, folding them into its walls and floors and cracks, keeping their thoughts, their fears, their names like trophies or food or family. And now it had mine. I went back into the bathroom that night. The original crack above the mirror was gone, but a new one had formed across the sink. It was small, barely noticeable, but when I leaned in close, I could see something behind it, not drywall, not insulation, something moving slowly, pulsing like breath. I whispered my name into the crack, and it whispered back, but not with my voice, not with anything human. It said my name like it owned it. Then it said another name, and I recognized it. It was my old friend Noah, a name I hadn't thought about in years. He died in a car crash when we were 22. No connection to this house, no connection to me, other than memory. And the second I heard it, I knew the house had reached back into me and pulled it forward. I started hearing Noah's voice in the walls the next day, and then my mother's, and then others' names I hadn't spoken aloud in decades, all pulled forward, all alive again in the cracks. The house wasn't just taking my present, it was taking my past, erasing it from memory, replacing it with its own shape, its own rhythm, its own whispers. I don't know how long I've been here now. The calendar pages keep changing backwards and forwards. My phone won't power on, and the sun doesn't set anymore. It just fades into dark without warning, and then the lights flicker and the whispers begin again. Last night, I saw a new message carved into the wall outside the bedroom door, not long now, and this morning I found a new crack stretching from the ceiling all the way down to the floor, splitting the room clean in two. Behind it, something breathes and waits. It knows I'm almost ready. It knows it owns my name, and soon I think it will own yours too. I think I finally understand what the house is. It's not just haunted. It's not even a place. It's something else, something that uses a place. It puts itself in walls and cracks. It hides in corners and attics and basements, and then it waits for someone like me, someone with too many memories, someone already broken in places they don't talk about. I haven't slept in what feels like days, not real sleep anyway. I close my eyes and I dream, but the dreams aren't mine. I see people I don't know. I feel things I've never done. A girl with long black hair cutting her palm in front of a mirror, a man alone in a wooden chair staring at a blank TV screen until blood runs from his ears. And all of it happens inside this house. Even when the rooms don't look like mine, they are mine because they all lead back to the same hallway. And that hallway leads back to the same door, and the door is locked. I found another name in the wall this morning, etched into the molding behind the dresser. It was small, almost too small to see unless you were looking, and I was looking, always looking. Now the name was my own again, only this time it was written backward, and when I whispered it aloud, the house laughed. I didn't hear it with my ears. I heard it in the pipes and the wood and the bones of the place, like laughter rattling through a coffin. It was a laugh I've never heard before, but it felt familiar, like something I used to know long ago, maybe from before I was born, maybe from before I was me. I try to hurt myself just to feel real again. I'm not proud of that, but I have to be honest, I scratched at my skin trying to feel myself underneath, but even that felt distant, like my body wasn't mine, like I was wearing someone else's memories, and the blood that came out was too dark, almost black, and when it hit the floor, it vanished into a crack like the house drank it like it needed it. I keep hearing my name, not just from the cracks anymore, but from inside my head, and the voice isn't mine. It's close. It's like someone trying to sound like me, someone learning how to be me and getting better every day. I recorded myself again yesterday, trying to say my own name into the phone just to hear what it sounded like. But when I played it back, I wasn't saying my name. I was saying his name, Norman Deal, the man who vanished in 1958 And I didn't even realize I'd said it until I listened, and even then I had no memory of speaking the words. It wasn't just a name, it was a replacement. The house is replacing me piece by piece, memory by memory, whisper by whisper. I found old journals under the floorboards and the attic pages written by people who lived here before. Most of them are unreadable, water damage, molding, faded from time. But the parts one could make out were all the same things, repeating names, shifting walls, missing time. One entry said the faces are peeling off the photographs. Another said the mirrors lie, and the floors remember your weight. And one near the back just said, I saw myself outside the window last night. And it smiled. I started watching the windows after that, keeping curtains drawn. But sometimes I see movement outside, not shadows, not animals, people who look like me, or like my mother, or like strangers I almost recognize, and they're just standing there, sometimes facing the house, sometimes turn away. And once I swear I saw one of them walk into the wall like the cracks are doorways. And they only open when the house decides. The spiral patterns on the ceiling are everywhere now. They move when I look away, and sometimes I wake up standing under them without knowing how I got there. I think they're meant to be walked through or followed, or maybe they're maps. And I'm getting close to the center. I don't feel fear anymore, not the normal kind now. I feel pressure, like something pushing from the inside out, trying to open me up, like I'm just another wall, another room to carve its name into and fill. With voices I've started hearing Caleb spoken by people I know aren't real, and I say back I'm here without meaning to over and over. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, until the house quiets. And when it quiets, it listens. Kenner stopped answering my calls. I drove to his place, and his car was there, but his windows were black, covered from the inside, and someone had written something into the dirt on his back window. Just one sentence. He brought the house with him. I left and didn't go back, because I think they're right. I think whatever the house is, it isn't tied to Wilder Street anymore. It's tied to me, and it goes where I go. I had a dream 2 nights ago, at least I think it was a dream. I was in the basement standing in front of the wall where all the names are. And they were speaking not all at once, not chaotic, but rhythmic, like chanting my name, my real name, then my backwards name, then names I didn't recognize, and then a door open in the wall, a real door, iron, and wet like something from inside the ground. And I stepped through. The floor was soft like flesh and warm like breath, and the hallway twisted in ways it shouldn't, and at the end was a room filled with cracks, and in each crack wasn't I watching, not blinking, just staring, and in the center of the room was a mirror. When I looked into it, I saw the house, not just Wilder Street, not just my home, but every home, every place I'd ever been, every school, every motel, every hospital, every place with walls and corners and silence, and all of it cracked. And crawling and whispering names, I woke up in the basement with a new word carved into my palm. Belong. I didn't carve it. And there was no blood, just the word, and it glowed for a few seconds before fading. I tried to take the mirror out of the attic and smash it in the yard, but when I stepped outside, everything stopped. The air, the wind, the sound. It was like stepping into a painting. The clouds didn't move, and the trees didn't sway. And when I looked at my hands, they weren't my hands anymore. They were too smooth, too new, like I'd been reset. The mirror slipped out of my grip and shattered, but the shards didn't fall. They floated and turned and showed me scenes from other lives. One was a man alone in a library, screaming names into a vent. One was a girl burying her face in a corner, whispering, not me, not me, not me. One was me, but older or younger, or maybe just not me at all. And then they fell, and the sound didn't happen until minutes later. And when it came, it was a whisper of my own voice, saying, let me out. I don't think I'm Caleb anymore. I don't know who I am. The house is inside me, and I'm inside it. And we're changing the cracks in my skin. At night, I scratch and paint over them, but they always come back longer, deeper, more defined. I think I'm becoming a wall, a room, a whisper. I remember the day the last door opened, I remember, because it didn't make a sound, it didn't creak or slam or groan like every other door in the house. It just wasn't there 1 minute. And there was not a doorway, not an entrance, a door, just standing in the middle of the living room, hovering 6 inches off the floor. No frame, no hinges, no explanation, just an old wooden door covered in carvings, covered in names. And every one of them was mine, not just Caleb, but every version of me I've ever been. The name I had as a baby, the one my mother whispered in the dark, the ones I used online, the ones I tried to forget, even the name I'd used in 3rd grade for that dumb fantasy game where I was a knight called Ser Kelbier, all of them carved into the wood, some in my own handwriting, some, and ones I didn't recognize, some in alphabets I don't even think exist, and the door pulsed not with light or sound, but memory. When I stood near it, I felt everything I'd ever done wrong. Every mistake, every lie, every scream I'd ever ignored. And then I felt things I never did, but could have, things I might still do, or might already have done in some version of myself behind that door. And I understood then that the house didn't just feed on people, it fed on selves, on identity and possibility. And the more names you had, the more it could eat. I don't know how long I stood there. I don't remember eating or sleeping or moving, but I remember blinking, and suddenly it was night, and the moonlight was spilling through the kitchen window. Except the moon wasn't right, it was cracked like a mirror, and something was watching me from inside. At the door opened that night, not with my hand, not with any wind, just slowly, gently, as if the house had decided I was finally ready, and on the other side was a hallway made of bone and breath and wallpaper that whispered, and I walked through, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop myself, because I had to, and because something in me had already stepped through before I even knew it. The hallway led to a room that looked exactly like my childhood bedroom. Same posters, same dresser, same burn mark on the carpet from where I dropped a sparkler when I was 8, and in the corner was my mother, smiling but wrong, like someone wearing her skin like a coat. And she said, "You finally came back." And I said, "I never left." And she said, "I know." And then she wasn't my mother anymore. She was just a wall covered in cracks, and the cracks said my name. They didn't whisper it this time. They sang it, thousands of little voices, all in unison, "Caleb, Caleb, Caleb." And they stretched across the ceiling and down the floor and into my arms and chest and face. And I could feel myself becoming part of them. I ran, I don't know where, but I ran down corridors that shouldn't exist, past staircases that led upward forever, and windows that showed places I've never been, cities full of empty people with mouths that didn't close and eyes that bled names. And every room I passed through had something familiar, something for me, a sock, a broken toy, a receipt from a gas station, a photo I don't remember taking, and each item glowed slightly, as if it still had heat from the moment I'd left it behind. And then I found the room, the one that had been waiting, the one I always ended up in, no matter where I ran, a room made entirely of mirrors, but not like glass, more like water or skin. And when I looked into them, I saw everyone who had ever lived in this house, and they all had my face, dozens, maybe hundreds, all slightly different, some older, some younger, some missing eyes or teeth or fingers. And they were all smiling. They said, "We've been waiting." And I said, "I don't want this." And they said, "You already chose." And then they walked forward through the mirrors and into me, and I felt them slide inside like voices filling my lungs, like thoughts that weren't mine, but had always been waiting to be. And suddenly I wasn't just Caleb anymore. I was everyone, and I was no one, and I could feel the house smiling because I had finally stopped resisting. I was home. I don't know how long I've been here since then. The clocks don't work, and the sun doesn't set. And sometimes I look out the window and see Places that don't exist, roads that turn in on themselves, forests made of teeth towns where the houses are alive and breathing. And they all look like this house, just versions of it stretching across reality like roots under skin. I don't speak anymore, not out loud. But the walls do. The walls use my voice sometimes to call the people outside. I heard them answer. Once a woman passing on the sidewalk, she paused and turned and stared up at the window. And she said, hello, like she recognized me, and I whispered her name from the cracks, even though I'd never met her, and she flinched like something touched her, and then she walked faster and the house sighed. But it was patient because it knew it would find someone else. I am not a man, now not a ghost, not a memory. I am part of the house. I am the wall behind the mirror. I am the whisper in the vent. I am the crack behind your bed that you think has always been there. I am the voice that calls your name when you're falling asleep and you think it was a dream. I am the shape in the reflection that doesn't quite match you. I am still Caleb, but not the one you remember. I watch the next tenant now. They moved in last week, young couple, happy, naive still. Unpacking boxes, they don't notice how the lights flicker when they say their names, how the wallpaper peels in the shape of letters, how the cracks shift at night. To listen, they don't know I'm already inside. The man stood in the hall yesterday staring at the mirror, and I whispered his name. He didn't react, but I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. I saw him look back. Just for a second, the house smiled. So, I'll give him a week, maybe less, then I'll start showing him things, the wrong photo on the wall of the dream. That feels too familiar. The scratch he didn't make, and one day he'll hear the door open, and it won't creak, and it won't groan, it'll just be there with his name. And when he steps through, he'll find me, or what's left of me, and I'll teach him how to whisper, just like I was taught. And the house will grow, and the names will spread, and one day, soon you'll hear your name, too, from a crack in a wall in a house that's always been there on a street you forgot you once visited, in a town you swore you've never seen, and it will say you're next.